Please welcome to the stage writer-director Samantha Davidson Green, producer Maria Rosenblum, actress Allison Faye Brown, and actor Christian Cohn. Go to the center. Go to the center.
Yeah, thank you.
I think they liked it.
Yeah.
That's great. So, even though we're a small group, if you really want to tweet your questions, I'll check. Otherwise, you guys just raise your hands. I'll call on you. I'll repeat your question so everyone can hear it. Do we have any questions? Don't be shy. Yes, right there. I'm only going to ask half of that question. How old was the dog? How old was Thrasher?
He was really such a wonderful actor. He was not at all put down as a part of the film. He went back to his ranch in Texas after shooting. He was 14 when we were filming. Yeah.
And when you say went back to the ranch, you're not being euphemistic, right?
No, he came from a ranch in Texas with his two trainers and traveled with us from Los Angeles to Mississippi, and then they took him back to Texas, and he lived to the age of 16. We think so too.
Yes, ma'am. How long did this take you to make and film?
Well, the filming, we shot for 5 weeks. 5 weeks. We, as you saw, shot in many states, and we had authenticity was very important to our approach, and we filmed in real locations everywhere. So we mostly shot in sequence, starting in Los Angeles through to Mississippi. The Vermont portions were the last part, so that was a little bit out of sequence. So over a 5-week road trip for the cast and crew.
Yes, ma'am. That's a really good question. So rather than shooting digitally, you shot on film. What's the good and the bad and the ugly of that?
Yeah. I'm going to answer briefly on that, and then I'd be interested in producer Maria's perspective and the actor's perspective. For me as a director, the decision was aesthetic and practical, actually, because we were filming in such hot places. Our cinematographer had experiences with digital cameras overheating, and we were shooting in the summer in the desert through California, Arizona, and then in Mississippi. So he thought a film would be more durable, actually. So we shot on 16 millimeter. Because of what that does to certain expenses in production, we had to be really, really disciplined. So we did many things in one take. It profoundly changed things because as a director, I didn't see dailies, I didn't see any film until we were done with the whole thing. So we didn't know if we had, it was just really old school. We didn't, if we had any malfunctions, for example, or performances that were really not working, we really didn't have the luxury to go back, and we were on a very tight budget. Though I do want to just acknowledge that in the room here we have several of the many individuals who contributed to making this film possible financially, and I just want to thank them. They know who they are. It was a real grassroots effort with a lot of contributors. But let me pass the microphone to the others to talk about working on film.
I think that Samantha really covered it. I mean, the main thing is that a digital camera would overheat in such high heat. You were working in 110 degrees. And I mean, something that we had to do like on a weekly basis was ship all the exposed film back to Photochem where it would get developed. And they would just tell us, yep, everything's okay. Or there was a scratch. Or But mostly we just heard it was okay because we had such amazing ACs.
Yeah, so as an actor, the stakes were a lot higher shooting on film as opposed to digital, because with digital there's take after take and you have a lot more wiggle room. So really shooting 1 or 2 takes made the stakes a lot higher for me. So I had to just bring my game to set at all times. I don't know how you felt about it, Chris, but it just made it more fun and exciting. Yeah.
Agreed.
Also, we all know each other from stage acting, and so these guys know how to get their game on and really concentrate, and also how to rehearse. So I appreciated that and trusted them a lot.
Actually, can you tell us a little bit more about the casting of these two? And we even had a little conversation about the character of Mac, because I just found his character very intriguing, and I would love to hear you talk about that a little bit. Yeah. And also hear from Christian, who drove all the way down from Vermont, right? Like how long ago did you get here?
I left at 3 a.m. less than 24 hours ago, I guess that is.
And he has to be back on
2 hours
set.
of sleep in 3 days.
He napped, he didn't want, no, just kidding.
Our casting was a little unusual in that this script was written when I met my actors, but it was still in development when Allison and I began working together on stage in Vermont at a community theater. We did a short play and then made a short film from that, and then did a full-length play together, and just had such an incredible rapport. I felt like I had found my Chloe, and so my revisions started to be written in relation to her as an actor. And then I had been watching Christian on stage in our area as well. And after a couple of shows of watching him, I felt that I had my Mac. So we did not do open casting for the 2 leads, which was a little unusual.
Questions? Because I'll just keep asking more questions if you don't ask any. Yes, ma'am. If the rest of you guys couldn't hear that, she's asking if the 2 actors had worked together before.
We did know each other. I had moved. I was an actor in New York for about 10 years and moved to New Hampshire to take a position at Dartmouth College teaching acting. And there's a professional regional theater there called Northern Stage, where I had the luxury of being on stage there several times. And Allison was working there. So we hit off a friendship, and that's also where Samantha saw my work. So, but it's a small sort of community in many ways, small movie-making community in New England, as well as theater community. So a lot of us cross paths very frequently up there.
Yeah, I was working in the box office at the theater, and I would see Chris on stage, and we had never worked together creatively before, but I'd seen his work, and I'd always wanted to not only film, work on a film and take a road trip and work with Chris. I just kind of wanted all of those things in life, and then they all just blended together. Thank you, Samantha, and it was the best of both worlds. It was really an exciting experience.
Yes, ma'am. This sounds like a planted question. Were there any adventures or misadventures in the filming process? Choose your top 3.
We're conferencing here to figure out which one to tell you, because honestly, there were so many things, and that was a little bit of a plant. That's a friend, but I don't know what she's heard. But I'll just tell when we were shooting in Ludlow, California, and it was 114 degrees. We were at that Chevron station in the middle of the desert. The Prius completely overheated, and life was imitating art and vice versa the whole way. So every warning light turned on as we were running the lights for the night driving from the battery of the car, but we had to run the AC constantly to keep the dog cool enough for different shots. So we had just overtaxed our little car. So it was actually what happened in the script was happening in real life. And I didn't dare drive it, and it was going to hold up the whole shoot, and it was going to be a domino effect, because we had a very tightly scheduled shoot all the way across country, and people in Mississippi waiting for us. We had 12 days there. So I kind of approached several of the mechanics who were working at the overheating 18-wheelers at that truck stop. That was like where trucks and cars went to die. I mean, it was just a graveyard of overheated vehicles and people just waiting out the heat. So in the middle of the night, I got some advice from a mechanic of how to get to Arizona. So I drove the car by myself in the middle of the night when it was cool enough, with all the lights on, with a plan for what I would do if it completely broke down. And at 8 a.m., I got to a Toyota dealer in Lake Havasu, Arizona. So little product placement, Toyota in Lake Havasu, Arizona, and they fixed some valves and got us back on the road. And but while I was there, our crew was back getting their gear together in our grip truck, and the water main for the town, the whole water main broke. So the whole crew left without showers or any running water or flushing toilets. So by the time we got to Williams, Arizona, where that historic Dairy Queen was, it started to sprinkle rain on us, and it was like a religious experience to have that water and have us all there and know that our film was going to continue down the road.
There's 2 more microphones if you guys have other stories.
I think there's a question.
Yes, there's a question there. So the question is about if you didn't hear it, the scene with the waitress at the ranchero who basically changed the trajectory of the story by intervening.
I'm so happy to get to talk about that, but I just first have to thank you all again so much for being here so late. I can't believe the dedication of this audience here in Stony Brook. It's extraordinary. So I meant to just say that up front. That scene, you know, I don't know where story ideas altogether come from for me, but I felt it was all throughout, it was important to see how sometimes people's mistakes or misbehavior can be a necessary step in the path towards other healing and opening. So his susceptibility to that invitation, and somebody who's just such, you know, a kind of starry-eyed romantic as a waitress looking for love. And she sort of, I worked a lot with that actress who's from Kentucky originally, but I knew her from Los Angeles at UCLA. And I knew she was really talented, and she really enjoyed exploring the kind of, the way that she was going to be like a siren on the journey and divert the story. But really is speaking the heart of the story as well, which nobody else sort of was able to do, none of the other characters. And I think it was a part of the motif of strangers on the road who do deflect our path in ways that, if we're open to, can open up things. So,
Sir, you'd had a question there? Yes. So, yeah.
oh, thank you.
Right, who's commenting on how nice it was to expose other people's lives, other kinds of lives to everyone through this film. One more question?
If I can just respond
Sure,
to that.
sure,
Just,
go ahead.
we showed this film at the Maine International Film Festival last weekend in a much more rural crowd. And it was wonderful to have that interaction, you know, because our main characters are New Englanders. But I lived in Mississippi, and several of my Mississippi friends are here, and many of my Mississippi friends are in the film and participated. And I have such a love for some of the rural parts of our country. So I really appreciate that that connected for you.
That's great. So what's next for all four of you?
Let's start at that end.
Well, I'm working on the reason I wasn't able to come down until yesterday morning is I'm working on a film that's, the director's out of New York, the whole production's out of New York, but they're shooting in Vermont as though it were Kansas. And the Green Mountains and the Kansas Plains. It's sort of a David Mamet, Glengarry Glen Ross meets a Coen Brothers film comedy, and sort of, and it's about storm chasers, but not the ones you see chasing the real storms. It's the guys that show up after the storm and try to sell you really bad roofing and siding supplies and tell you that it will be paid for by the insurance company, which it's not. So it's sort of a con story. And it's interesting. It's going to be exciting, I think.
So I'm also a singer-songwriter, and in August I'm going to be recording an album, an EP, so that I can build a tour. That's what I'm working on, and I'm going to New York tomorrow for a couple days to showcase some new songs. You can find me online at AlisonFayeBrown.com. Self-promotion.
I just completed editing a feature film. That's really what I just did. So we just locked picture, and so I've been in a dark room in front of a computer for about 6 months.
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure, but I hope it's making another feature film. We are still at the beginning of our festival run, so a lot of what we're working on now is bringing this one out into the world. And now I'll do the promotion for this film, which is, if you are interested in helping us in any way with that, you can go to our website and sign up to join our email list. And I run it myself. I'm like the little wizard behind the curtain. So it's not a big commercial operation. We're just taking this to different festivals around the country and hoping to find distribution and bring the story to more audiences. And while working on that, I am developing a new script that's a small road movie between New Hampshire and New York, not cross country, but also based on a real story of an encounter between some church ladies who go to New York City to do charity work. And it's I will tell you more about that if you join our mailing list.
So remember to vote. You love the movie, so vote like you love the movie Thrasher Road.
Thank you again so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.